We have an important guest joining in now. We have Tom Albanese, the CEO of Sesa Sterlite, joining in to talk to us. Hi, Mr. Albanese. Thanks very much for joining in. You join us on a day where three of the stocks, Hindustan Zinc, Sesa Sterlite and Cairn India, are down on the bourses because of reports indicating that, Cairn and Hindustan Zinc might eventually be merged into Sesa Sterlite and that the company has already hired consultants to look at this. Can you comment on this?
Well, I think, first of all, the markets have been generally weak in the resources sector because of a broad range of macroeconomic activity driven by oversupply in some of these products. So, again, this is part of the normal part of the cycle. I want to reinforce the low-cost nature of our businesses and the diversified nature of those businesses. I think, over the years, we've said that it's a priority of the board to simplify the corporate structure. And, of course, the Sesa Sterlite merger of about a year and a half ago was a very important step along those directions. Since then, of course, many have been saying, okay, what's the next step? Can you simplify even further? And of course, we've been exploring a lot of ideas. We get ideas and we get thoughts from everyone else, but at this point, that's really all we can say about it.
Hi, Mr. Albanese. Thanks so much for joining in. So simplifying the structure is something that you're looking forward to. But what's going on? Because the promoters have been hiking stake in Sesa Sterlite. They've almost done the full haul of around 5% in this year itself. What's the clarity on that front?
Look, I think, again, the main focus of what we're working on is those things that we can control, particularly in a weak market environment. So, bringing our production up to capacity, getting our aluminum production up, getting iron ore mining going in Goa and Karnataka, and working on a cost structure, particularly in those weak markets. All of these are very, very important. I mean, for in this environment, I'm actually quite positive on a going forward basis. I see the opportunities for India's demand growth to encourage. So, for me, it's a buying opportunity. I myself personally last month bought some shares for my own personal account. And I would just say these, share purchases to the extent they're happening is being a long-term expression, confidence in the company, and certainly confidence in the future Indian economy buying more and more of our products.
All right, Mr. Albanese, quite a valid point you make there. You're as well showing quite a lot of faith in the company. But let's get to the main talking point of the last couple of weeks with regard to the MMDR ordinance. Now, how much of a positive is it for you all once it gets passed? And in fact, now that it's stuck, what's your view on it? And importantly, with regard to pricing of non-coal products, how do you think they're going to be priced?
Yes, I think we've been proponents for an auction approach to break the current logjams for quite some time. So I'm supportive of the current efforts to amend the mining legislation. I think it is about getting the mining sector off ground zero, getting it moving again. And I think you've seen this in coal, but you've seen it in other sectors where a history of controversy, almost decades of it, in some of the allocations and the practices and approaches, I think has created an element of distrust on any transfer of assets from the public space to the private space. So for me, auctions are a way to basically regain that trust. And I think for me, the auction process is not so much about revenues coming into the state from the private sector as much ensuring full transparency of the pricing of those resources owned by the state so that it can be developed by private companies. So I'm a supporter of this. I think that there will be quite a number of details to be worked out over time. I think that that in those leases where everyone has perfect information of what the resource is, the size of the resource, the quality of the resource, the market for that resource, everyone will go in with the same bit of information. But practically around India, most of the blocks that are going to be considered will not have perfect information. There'll still be geology that hasn't been fully completed. It's going to be up to someone investing capital to finish that geology. So different people will be looking at it with different lenses, different technical lenses, different marketing lenses, different applications, and that's what will create the competition, and that's what will create the auction.
Okay. Mr. Albanese, I just wanted a couple of more questions on the merger bit, which is possibly being contemplated or looked at actively at this point in time. Can you just tell us whether you would be in favor of a possible merger of Cairn and Hindustan Zinc into Sesa Sterlite eventually? Because the fear is that both Cairn and Hindustan Zinc are net cash companies, whereas Sesa Sterlite has a debt figure of over 29,000 crores. So it really wouldn't be fair for shareholders of Cairn and Hindustan Zinc to actually get their cash diluted in terms of a merger.
Well, let me make it absolutely clear. This is speculative. We had the Sesa Sterlite merger a year and a half ago. We've said we're going to look for ways of simplifying the company. So obviously we're going to be exploring those opportunities. Anything that would happen or could happen has to take quite a range of complicated pieces into account. It has to take in a range fairness for all of the shareholders. It has to take into account the regulatory regimes in a number of multiple jurisdictions. And of course, it has to take into account the fact that the government of India owns a sizable piece of Hindustan Zinc. So, you know, these are all things that would need to be considered, but this is strictly speculative, and it is part of that progression of what we've discussed in the past about simplifying the corporate structure.
Right, then let's talk about Hindustan Zinc, Mr. Albanese. What's the update there? Which fiscal year is it going to go through? Because this has been a long, prolonged process. And also your final bid for Hindustan Zinc, what is it, at around $150? Is there any chance that you're going to make that bid a tad bit more attractive and maybe throw the bait to the government of India? What's your take on that with regard to Hindustan Zinc? Where exactly is this playing out?
Well, look, I think this is in the hands of the government of India. There is no bid out there. The government of India indicated its interest in disinvestment, which we're supportive, and certainly from our perspective, from the market's perspective, this would be an auction-type approach. And again, the details of that auction are pending. We haven't heard anything, and we look forward to hearing for something. And I think from my perspective, we would look forward to the government announcing its intentions, and to the extent we review it, and if it looks attractive, we'd be participating.
Okay. Mr. Albanese, can you tell us how Cairn India's realizations are doing at this point in time? Simply because Brent is now trading sub $50 as we speak. What is the impact on Cairn? And there are fears that it could be free cash flow negative going into FY16. Could you comment on that as well?
Yeah, I think for the global oil environment is dramatically different at $100 Brent versus at $50 Brent. And even though we're one of the lowest cost producers of the business, we're seeing the big impact in our revenues dropping, as all the other oil companies around the world. We do have the benefits of a very low cost structure and a very high quality reservoir. So that puts us in a position of being, I think I'd use the term last man standing in that environment. We are definitely focused on staying positive cash flow in this business, and so we're looking at our operating costs, we're looking at our capital costs, we're looking at our projects, we're looking at what projects that we may have considered even a few months ago that may not be so attractive in this price environment. So we'll be doing what everyone else in the global oil industry will be doing. I myself joined the Cairn team in a series of review trips to Calgary and Houston just during December, and I got a first-hand impression of what's going on in terms of both the oil industry, the gas industry's efforts to reduce costs, defer projects, and certainly I also got a very clear idea of what the vendors in the oil and gas space are doing to actually make their own services much more competitive. And certainly from our perspective, this is the environment where we need to be negotiating hard with all of our vendors to look at a more fit-for-purpose operating cost and capital cost structure in this low-price oil environment.
All right, Mr. Albanese, you told us that, in fact, with regard to that entire merger talk, I'll tell you what, the market is as flat as can be, but Cairn India, as we speak, is 4% lower, so clearly investors are not too happy with this stock. But let's get to the coal ordinance then. That's been passed. One important point that I want to ask you about is that you all have been talking to the Odisha government with regard to transferring power from Sterlite Energy to VAL. Now, post this coal ordinance, you'll have to sell some part of that coal via you'll have to reserve some part of that coal, in fact, to sell it to state boards, etc. So do you think this is possible, transferring that power that you're generating from Sterlite Energy to VAL? Where has this reached in terms of discussion, and is this any kind of hindrance for that particular plan that you had?
Yeah, let me first talk about coal, because again, the entire country and the economy of India has been suffering from a shortage of coal. And there's been also quite a bit of uncertainty in the coal sector because of the recent disallocations. So I think we're coming into 2015 with a weak coal supply environment and a lot of uncertainty. And I think, you know, certainly it's high on the priority list of Indian senior policymakers to recognize India with some of the highest highest quality resources of coal in the world has become the third largest importer of coal from the seaborne market. So clearly something needs to be done, and I'm very encouraged. I think I'm very appreciative of the leadership of the government to be taking an active hand in moving quite quickly with these coal auctions, both for IPP and CPP, so we can get some of this coal, which is not being fully utilized, into the market and eliminate these coal shortages that are so dogging industry in general in India and elevating energy prices. So I think that's quite important from our perspective.
Mr. Albanese, do you still think that...
more toward the energy picture.
Right. Go ahead, sir.
Yes. So from our perspective, we're actively involved in looking at the details being provided on the various leases that are being considered, and I'd hope to be in a position where we could be reviewing. But of course, we got to look at all the details as they emanate over the next few weeks.
Okay. All right, Mr. Albanese.
Now, on energy, clearly we're in a position where we have.
Okay, I think we lost that line with Mr. Albanese, but overall the important takeaway coming in is that the merger with regards to Sesa Sterlite Ken and Hindustan Zinc is currently speculative, but they will certainly explore options in terms of making a simpler corporate structure.